a pleasure to be in my home state of Texas. We're in the best city. The mayor's gone, but we can talk about it, right? This is the best city in the state of Texas. It's the best city in the country of the United States. And I'm going to say it right now, Fort Worth is the best city in the world. And what do we say to that? Yeah. Woohoo! You know, I speak around the world, and when I'm talking to audiences, I often teach them a little bit of Texan. But I'm 100% confident that I don't even have to teach you the words of this. The stars at night are big and bright. Man, that's what it's about, right? I am so glad to be here. Thank you to the Capitol Chart Room for inviting me. Thank you to the Bank of Texas for sponsoring me. It is a pleasure to be with each of you today. And may I ask your permission? By raise of hands, is it okay with you if I share a few personal stories and experiences from my own life that have brought happiness, joy, and also success? All right, some of you didn't raise your hand. We're going to excuse you. No, just kidding. I'm excited to be with you today, and I want to share some of these stories and personal experiences that have worked for you. It by no means that they're going to work exactly for you, but I promise you that they are true, and I have benefited from them. I want to start with a story of my own family. I have 4 children, and when I was a young father, my 2 oldest kids were 4 and 2 years old, and we were going through those nightly rituals like you all probably do, getting them ready for bed, etc. And my 4-year-old looked up to me and he said, "Dad, are you going to stay at Mom's house tonight?" And it was at that moment that I realized my own son didn't know I lived there. Now you laugh, but that almost killed me as a father, because he didn't care that I was working late at night. He didn't care that I was a graduate student, building the future of dreams and ideas. He didn't necessarily even care that, I had a full-time job and was serving in the community. All he knew is that when he went to bed at night sometimes, I wasn't there. When he woke up in the morning, my car wasn't there. So guess what? Dad must live somewhere else, because we see him at dinner time, and he is here, and he comes to activities. At that moment in my life, I realized that it's possible for 2 people to be having very different experiences. And I decided I wanted to emphasize the importance of experiences, and that experiences matter most. As we go through life, it's important for us to identify what are we doing that are checklist behaviors, and what are we doing that are experiences and building experiences for others. In particular, the ones that we care about, we love, or we spend a great deal of time with at work. I want you to think for a moment. I want you to think about your own company culture. Is your company culture more of a checklist culture of these are the things we do and these are the things we don't? Or is it an experience? When people walk into work, is there someone in the hallway saying, "Ladies and gentlemen, it's Stacy from accounting. She's entering, having completed 18 reports this month. Let's give it up for Stacy." No, nobody has that, right? But imagine if we walked into work, if we showed up into a meeting, and it was an experience. I want to talk today about how we can create experiences. Researchers have found that it is experiences that influence our thoughts that then establish habits which create behaviors. So there's a necessary step process. So if we want to change behaviors, what do we need to do? We need to reverse engineer it. If I want to change behaviors, I've got to create new experiences. So, how do I do that? I'm going to talk about these 3 ideas today. I spent over 12 years in education as a teacher, and I learned that the shortest pencil is greater than the longest memory. And I would invite you to jot down some notes, not necessarily of what I say, because that may be insignificant, but of the ideas, the names, the faces, and the thoughts that come to your mind. And then take action. As we talk about these 3 principles, I'm going to invite you to make experiences matter most in your personal life, in your professional life, and in the lives of those you work with and impact on a regular basis. So let's begin. Number one, how do we create new experiences? We see what they see. I had a fear of flying, so much so that in the year 2000, I had a panic attack while on board before the flight left, and I begged the stewardess and pilot to let me off the plane. This was pre-September 11th and all of the security measures that are in place today, and they allowed me to step off the plane. I was traveling for work with a companion, and he and I were on a business trip. And when they got us off the plane, I looked at him and said, I don't know how we're going to get home. And he was there with me, and I appreciated that. And he said, we'll just rent a car and drive. So it was a 12-hour drive. We drove home. I had another business trip coming up. I'm a speaker. I travel all over the world. My friend who was going to take me to the airport knew that I had this issue. And so we rode to the airport together, and he played Tom Petty's song, I Won't Back Down, right? I'm not a good singer, so please don't rate me on my singing. But you know what's interesting is that I get to the airport, I walk out to the terminal, the gate, and I board the plane, and it has propellers. So I'm already panicking, right? Because it's not as big and safe maybe as I thought it should be. And so I get in my assigned seat. Sure enough, I'm locked in. And the stewardess comes and says, hey, would you be willing to change seats with someone else? And I just said, no, thank you. Right? Destiny has me in this seat. And win, lose, or draw, it's just like, this is where I'm at. Really sorry, I can't help you today. And that's how afraid I was to fly. So we get to our destination, and it was an international trip. I'm waiting in the airport for my next flight, and I hear, flight is now boarding. And so I thought, I better get to the gate. So I get to the gate, I don't see the airplane. And I think, my goodness, where is the airplane? They called it again, and I thought, well, I'm at the right gate. So I walked over to the window to see if I could see something. And when I walked out, I immediately went like this. And there was a 10-seat airplane. So I have two options. Number one, take out residency in a foreign country, call home and say, hey, Dad doesn't live here, right? Or I just get on board and I just suck it up and we go. So I did the latter, got on board, hopped in, sat in the very front seat. The pilot got in, closed the door, said a few instructions, smiled at me and said, I hope you got all of that because if there's a problem, you're going to be the one to help. Little does he know, right? And I'm just like panicking. He sees it in my eyes and he says, I'm just kidding. He climbs over the panel, starts the plane, and we're off. And what's interesting about these small planes that differs from the large ones is there's no curtain that separates. I got to see out the front window. And guess what when turbulence happened? Nothing, right? When we were making banks and turns, nothing happened. In fact, there were times where the co-pilot even was flipping through a little booklet, maybe a magazine, maybe doing some Sky Mall shopping. I'm not sure, right? But what happened to me in that moment is my experience with flying changed because I could see what the pilot saw. I could see that when turbulence happened, I didn't have to be afraid. I could see that when we were coming into the runway, and even though the horizon, was tilting, I could see what the pilot was seeing, and my fears went away. And almost immediately, I no longer had a fear of flying. And now I'm proud to say that I have a passport full of stamps from around the world and no longer worry about flying. Why? Because I had a change in experience. It's important for us to realize that these experiences that we're having can happen like this at work. Maybe you've seen a photo like this before. Two people looking at the same thing, but both sharing a different idea of what's happening. Both are right. Both are wrong. So how do we solve the problem? As a leader, I need to ask the question, tell me what you see. As a leader, I need to walk over and I need to see what they see. Now I see what you see. And I understand why your responses are the way that they are. I understand why your fears are the way that they are. I understand why this is a challenge to you. I was not seeing it the way that you saw it. Sometimes we need to invite that employee to the other side so that they can see what we see. And like the great proverb said, where there is no vision, the people will perish. Sometimes we need to help them see the vision. Just like the bricklayer who was asked, what is it that you're doing? And he said, I'm just moving bricks. And then they asked another bricklayer, what are you doing? And he said, I'm building a hospital that will save lives forever. We need to help people see what they need to see so that they can unleash their superpowers. I believe in three things. Number one, I believe in people, just like you, and I believe that there are great people around the city, the places that we work at, and around the world. Number two, I believe that people have unique abilities, talents, skill sets. I call them the superpowers. And that when we unleash these superpowers, we can change our workplaces, we can change our communities, and I guarantee you we can change the world. But we have to begin by seeing what other people are seeing. Sometimes we'll have a bad day. Sometimes we'll come out of a meeting that's highly stressful, and we have to identify ourselves, and we have to say, well, I'm not sure exactly how I feel in the moment, and so I'm frustrated, and I might have this passed on experience that I'm sharing with someone else. When I was an educator and a teacher, it was important for me to, train teachers that they were going to have good days, bad days, and everything in between. Who knows what high school students are going to bring to a classroom? Who knows what environment that they're coming from? And so as I had the responsibility for teaching over 150 teachers throughout my career, I would often say to them, you're going to spend a lot of time preparing lessons that the students are not going to remember, but they will always remember that you were their teacher. And so it's important how you make them feel. And then I would ask them about lessons. What are some lessons you remember? And they would give a few, but they could never tell me more than 2, and not even 3. And those were usually the science experiments that went bad or something like that, right? But you know what they could do? They could tell me 5, 6, 7 teachers who cared about them. And when I would say, how did you know they cared? Guess what words they would say? They were there for me. They helped me. They showed up. Those are the same words that we can adopt in our workplaces. We were there, we care, we show up. Now, when we have these challenging moments in life, it's important for us to realize that there is a line, and this line is this line of just comfort and everything's fine, and we're not always on that line. And so what we need to realize is there are times where we are below the line, and it's okay to be below the line. It's okay to feel negative, and it's okay sometimes to get bad news, but we don't live there. Because what happens when we're below the line is that our feelings sometimes are below. So we need to help raise those feelings above the line. And we need to help our employees and our teams go above the line, so that the words that they start to use are positive words versus negative words. So that when we have meetings and we have change, which is always inevitable in our organizations, that they're not using these words in closing, but instead they're using these words of learning, discovery, and openness. It's really up to us. It's a choice. Do we want to be a below the line or an above the line? If we realize that our team and the impact that we're having is below the line, what can we do to elevate and bring people up above the line? We live in a world where we can quickly make decisions and we can create experiences. In fact, I'm going to give you a challenge quickly. If you will, just pull out your phone, and on your phone, open up to your text messages. All of us have a litany of emojis, and I want you to just play text message roulette. We're going to take our finger and we're just going to scroll it and we're going to stop. And if you feel comfortable with this person, I'm not going to force you. I want you to tap on that person, and I want you to go to your messages, and I'm going to tap on the emoji, and I'm just going to tap one of the emojis that I like there. I'm going to do the cool sunglasses emoji, and I'm going to send it. That's going to create an experience in that person's day, and we're going to have a conversation at lunch, because they're going to say, why are you sending me this? But that's how easy it is for us to sometimes go from below the line to above the line, is we just want to create an experience. Lastly, exceed expectations. Our employees are often asked to fill out evaluations, performance reviews, and they're asked, did you meet expectations, or did you exceed expectations, or were you below expectations? But what if our teams gave us those feedback? Do we just meet expectations as a leader? Do we just meet expectations as a company? Are we below expectations to our employees? How do we exceed expectations, and what can we do? I was traveling to Canada, and I'd never been to the great city of Montreal. When I arrived at the airport, I was taking a taxi to my hotel, and I got to have a conversation with the taxi driver. And as we were talking, I just said, hey, I've never been to Montreal. Do you have a few things that you would recommend? What are some of your highlights? And he started rattling them off. What is it that you like to do? I'd like to eat. I'd like to see some things. And he said, how long are you here? I said, I'm really just have one free night. I have some meetings, and then I only have a night. He said, why don't you call me? Here's my personal cell phone number, and if I'm available, I will be your driver, and I will take you into town, and I'll show you around. I thought, great, that's awesome. So sure enough, my meetings ended. I gave him a call. He said, sure, I can be there in a few minutes. I got in his cab, and we were off for an adventure. He said, are you hungry? I said, yeah. He said, have you ever had a meat sandwich? Yeah. He said, the best meat sandwiches are Schwartz. Has anyone ever been to Schwartz Deli? Best meat sandwich? Pretty good. So we're eating this meat sandwich, and I'm just feeling great and excited. The check comes. I pull out my wallet to pay, and they say, hey, cash only. I have not changed my money, and I don't even have cash. And the taxi driver looks at me and says, hey, no big deal. I ate with you. I'll buy. Okay. We drive back into the city. He said, hey, I want you to get out of the taxi, and I just want you to walk across because there's some really cool things here. I'm going to go around a few blocks, and I'll meet you on the other end. Dropped me off. Sure enough, I walked through, saw some things. Bang, there's the taxi. Pretty cool. He said, hey, I know that you're from the United States, and you've probably had a bagel, and you've probably even had a New York bagel. But have you ever had a Fairmont bagel? I said, no, I haven't had a Fairmont bagel. And he said, let's go. It's like 10 o'clock at night by now. So sure enough, we go to Fairmont Bagels. We roll in there. He says, they're open all night because they're making the dough. And guess what? It's the water is the secret. I'm like, okay, cool. So sure enough, we get a dozen bagels. We're eating them there by his taxi. He says, can I take you to one more place? I said, sure. We drove into the city again. We went into the mall. We walked into the mall. It was closed, but he was able to get in because he said, this was my family's store. We had a jewelry store. My dad had it. It was passed on to us, and now I drive taxi. What an incredible moment. This person exceeded all expectations that I had. When we got back to the hotel, he just said, pay me for the taxi ride and whatever you feel you would like. And he said, and next time you come to Montreal, bring your family, and I'll be your driver. Now, we can't always expect that our employees are going to exceed expectations in that way, but what can we do? And as leaders, how can we ensure that we are providing experiences and opportunities to exceed expectations? One of them begins when a new employee starts. Retention begins on day one. When that employee shows up on the first day, what kind of experience are they having? Are we scrambling through the paperwork? I know you're supposed to start. I know your manager's here somewhere. I know you're supposed to get a laptop. I know you're supposed to get a uniform. What kind of experience are we giving them on that first day? I've helped organizations build onboarding programs that create experiences. In the first 5 days and beyond, I call it first impressions last. And they should last the career. By additional touch points, like meetings and one-on-ones. Let's make meetings memorable. Let's ask questions to our employees about how they're doing, and then let's listen. Let's also highlight the 3 V's that every employee wants. Number 1, to be valued. Number 2, to be validated in what they do. And number 3, to feel valuable. When we do that, we will exceed expectations. If we want to improve our communications, if we want to bring together and build stronger connections with people, then what we need to do is we need to create experiences that will matter most. Thank you so much.